Hey there, you lovely lot, and welcome back to Crime Analyst. And you can see I'm not in the intelligence cell, but I am out walking with my savage wee golden doodle queen bee, Miss Beatrice. And I know many of you have wanted to see her, and you'll see her in a minute. It's not always easy to do when we are in the recording studio, but there she is. And you'll know I dropped a very short video just explaining that Nicola Bulley, the Part 4 will come next week, and of course it's the anniversary coming up on the weekend, so I did just want to pay tribute to Nicola and her family because of that anniversary. It's never easy, no day is easy, and it must be extremely difficult for them still trying to make sense of what happened. So I'm not going to talk about Nicola today, but I did want to share with you that I did an interview with Dan Abrams about Taylor Swift being stalked. And I did that interview yesterday, and I'll post it when I can. But seeing as I am talking about stalkers and serial stalkers and domestic abusers in my last video, and I've been working on the petition and changing laws in England and Wales to ensure that serial stalkers, their histories are joined up, I wanted to say something about the Taylor Swift case, because Taylor does have security. She has a lot of resources. She has a doorman. So when this individual, David Crome, keeps turning up, as he has done more than 30 times since November the 25th, there's someone there, i.e. there's a buffer. And 10 times he's tried to enter the building, 10 times he's been rejected. He's been arrested 3 times just this week. And I do just want to say a couple of things about that. Because when you do an interview, I did it with Dan Abrams, you don't always get out everything that you want to say. But the first thing is that an individual like that who keeps flouting court orders and doesn't play by the rules is a problem. And he is a law student at the moment. He is showing that he doesn't respect the law, and he's showing his levels of fixation and obsession to Taylor Swift. Keeps saying that he wants to see her. Neighbours are calling the police. He appears emotionally disturbed. I mean, this is all very concerning stuff that talks to risk. And the reason why his history has to be joined up, well, he's in his 30s, and this won't be his first rodeo. And what I mean by that is he will have behaved like this to others. And it's really important to understand that. Someone doesn't just wake up on their 3rd or 4th decade of life and start stalking. It's about an attachment issue. It's about a relational attachment issue when someone becomes fixated and obsessed. And that's really why you need trained specialists, because just by the very nature of the behaviour, the turning up unannounced, the constant using everything in his life, all his resources, all his time and energy to achieve something that really is unrealistic, to see Taylor Swift. Why? And what's his motivation? What's he seeking to achieve? And if he doesn't get what he wants, that's when risk can escalate to something much more serious and sinister. And with Christina Grimmie, you might recall, the singer who was killed at her own concert. There's been the case of Dr. Amy Harwick. There's been many cases. Rebecca Schaefer, which is why the stalking law came in here in California, the first state and country in the world to legislate against stalking and stalkers. And it's so important laws are updated, and that's what I spent time doing when I realised Claire Burnell was stalked and murdered in Harvey Nichols in 2005 by a former security guard who worked there, and she had reported, and we didn't understand at the Met that she was being stalked. And I spent a lot of time talking to her family, to her mother Tricia, to try and understand the stalking behaviour of what was going on, and that the head of security understood that Michael Pesch was a problem and investigated him, and he lost his job because of his fixation on Claire, who had moved from Tunbridge Wells to London, and it was her first job. She was really excited, and then unfortunately this older guy was in his 30s, she was 22, fixated on her, wanted to date her. She wasn't interested and was trying to let him down gently, and he continued and created problem after problem for her. And it really ended up in him being told that he had to leave her alone and stop contacting her, but he wasn't happy with that. He ended up turning up at her address with flowers in the middle of the night and following her on the tube and all sorts of horrific things. When he was actually on the tube, he blocked her exit. when she tried to get off, and he basically walked closer to her. And I want to make this part clear because it really is when Claire understood the risk. He stepped closer to her, he stroked her cheek, and he smiled as they were nose to nose, and he said, "If you report me to the police, I will kill you. And if I can't have you, no one can." And it was then that Claire, so I just need to swap the camera, realised that he was a risk to her, and she reported him to police. And the bottom line was they did arrest him, they did interview him, but he kept saying, "I just want to be with her, I just want to get with her and get her back and have a relationship with her." And the officer felt sympathy towards him and unfortunately didn't realise how serious it was, believed his narrative, and he was released. He then went and found Claire again. He was angry with her. He was then investigated at work, and then he was rearrested. He lost his job and he was angry and blamed Claire. And then he left the country for a short while, came back into the country, he had a gun, and then in September 2005, at 20 to 8, he went through a side door in Harvey Nichols and he shot Claire in the back of the head and then 3 times in the face. Such a horrific case, and I believe it was preventable. And then when I met with Tricia, I was the head of the homicide prevention unit, I analysed the case. I really felt we should have done far more to protect her. It's a much longer story that I can tell you about the case, but I have trained hundreds and thousands of officers using the case because there are so many intervention opportunities. And we went on to change the law, and I set up Paladin to help victims of stalking, and I've worked on thousands and thousands of cases. So it really is important that there's a law in England and Wales that it's used, but also that stalkers' histories are joined up. The history of their offending behaviour is so important that they're joined up. And it's the stalker that's looked at and not the victim in terms of the history. And there's a proactive problem-solving process, multi-agency, because normally there are mental health issues. And so it needs to be a problem-solving process. And that's what I'm trying to ensure comes in, that they go on VISA, the Violent and Sexual Offenders Register, and they are managed via MAPA, so that they get convicted and their history follows them, so that the next relationship they have to disclose. There's a positive obligation on them to disclose the history, and the victim can make, the next victim, a decision about whether they stay with them, but they know there's a history. And then there's a number of things. They can't change their name by depot, for example. There's a number of other things, positive obligations that can be placed on them. But it brings me to New York because the law is really outdated, and there are 4 counts for first degree stalking, which is a felony, second degree stalking, which is a felony, and that's when someone's been seriously injured. Well, that's too late, right? That's the most serious piece of the legislation. And then there's stalking in the 3rd and the 4th, which is what David Crome's been charged with, 1 count of stalking in the 4th, and it's really seen as a misdemeanor, i.e. something much lesser, and that's the problem. He's just going to repeat offend, and it's going to be a revolving door. So that's why it makes no sense. You have to look at their history. You have to have a piece of legislation that is preventative. How many more victims will there be? And oftentimes it is men stalking women. And this, like I said, Taylor can afford to be elsewhere, but other women can't be protected in the same way because they don't have the resources. So it's really important that the perpetrator's history is joined up and that they're understood to be a problem. They're assessed, not just a competency test to see whether they're fit to stand trial, but having a psychiatrist who's trained in stalking to diagnose them and then to risk manage them. It's so important. I don't want to hear about Taylor Swift having to carry all sorts of things on her person in case she gets shot or stabbed. This is not a way for any woman to live her life. So that's why it's important. Under New York law, I know that they don't look at the history. There's no specialist stalking clinic, for example, and there needs to be. We know it's not just celebrities. I've talked in detail. Do watch my Dr. Amy Harwick videos where it was talked to in court by his female defense attorney after he killed Amy, that he had these big emotions. Now, I'm not here for the sympathy. Somebody has psychological issues, whatever they are, we need to understand what they are and ensure that they're not a risk to members of the public. And this individual is, from what I can see. So I just wanted to share that with you, because some people might think, oh, well, that's Taylor Swift and she's got all the resources and we still can't get it right. And that's exactly right. Well, what does that mean for if you're just Jane Normal or Joe Normal and you're going through this? Well, what it means is that you're largely unprotected. The law right now isn't preventative, and the wrong advice is being given to victims as well. Too often they're told to change their phone, move address. You know, they have to change their behaviour, where all along it's the perpetrator that's the problem. And that's also why we have to pivot to the perpetrator. We have to flip the script and assess the perpetrators and problem solve them and investigate them thoroughly. What else is going on in their lives? Okay, it's a really important point. So I'm going to end there just saying that if you are a victim of stalking, you can get assistance from Paladin, the National Stalking Advocacy Service in the UK. There's a lot of information on Paladin's website. I created ISACs, independent stalking advocacy caseworkers who are accredited, university accredited, to assist victims emotionally with their trauma and support them, but also with criminal justice options and civil justice options. And in the UK, there is a national stalking helpline. So we need to do a lot more here in America. It's over 7 million who are stalked every year, and there's no such service. There's no such helpline or independent stalking advocacy caseworkers, and we really need them. Stalking is terrifying when it happens to you, and particularly if you're a woman and you have this intrusion, this male who's intruding upon every aspect of your life. We know they can become predatory stalkers as well. Think about American Nightmare, which is on Netflix right now, breaking all the records, and I've had the honour of interviewing Denise and Aaron, who are the victims. Matthew Muller was a predatory stalker. It's really important that we understand stalking, and they can be serial killers. You can listen to my episode on Real Crime Profile with them, and also with Detective Misty Karasu, the one officer who got it right, the female officer who was right and investigated it. So important that victims are believed, my goodness, particularly in that case where there was corroborating evidence that was ignored. And on Real Crime Profile, we have another episode due to drop next week. And you can listen to me talk with Bill and Kristen about the Colonial Parkway murders. Again, Alan Wilmer Sr. was a predatory stalker and serial killer. That's where you get the nexus. You know, I have no doubt he was probably abusive in his interpersonal relationships with women, because you don't just wake up one day and start behaving like that, stalking women, raping them and killing them. So we have to join this up, make the links, as I call it. So please sign my petition. It will really help to use your voice. And I have a lot more to say. You will hear on a Crime Analyst episode that's just about to drop me interview Isla Traquair, who was stalked, and how terrifying it was for her. You'll hear her first-hand account. And we talk about why the register is so important and what it means in practice of what will change. So watch out for that Crime Analyst episode, and my episode on Dr. Naomi Dancy will drop next week as well. So I'm battling the doodle here because she's got her own mind of where she wants to go when walking. It's not easy doing this walk and talk, but anyway, I thought I'd do a more informal one of just walking and talking and sharing with you my thoughts and reflections. So until next time, be curious, ask questions, and always trust your instinct, and go and sign the petition.